Hey, hello, and welcome to Bold Women Lawyers Spotlight. I'm Sharon Christie, founder and CEO of Bold Women Lawyers. Bold Women Lawyers provides business coaching to women lawyers like myself, women lawyers who are in solo and small law firm practices. We have a terrific guest today, Rachel Harrison, who is not a lawyer, but has a lot to tell us and teach us about how to grow a legal business. And I don't mean, versus an illegal business. I mean how to grow a law practice. So Rachel, welcome. I'm really happy to have you here today.
Thanks, Sharon. I'm so glad to be here with you today. Thanks for having me.
Now, Rachel, you and I have met actually through a mastermind is
Right.
how you and I have met. And I learned through that connection about not just the work that you do now, but I learned how you built your business as a therapist. So we want to talk about that today. But first, I want to ask you to just give us sort of the description and the timeline of how you went from you get out of school and you're a therapist, right?
Mm-hmm.
To where you are now, just the steps that you took along the way, and then we'll talk about those steps.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So, gosh, get out of school. I'm a therapist, right? I first just look for a job with somebody else. That's, the basic thing that we all do. I think that's the safe way to go. Ended up working for an agency, and the way that they were doing therapy was not a fit for me. And so I was like, I got to find another job. And in that process, met another therapist who said, hey, I'll help you if you want to start your own private practice, which really wasn't on my radar at all. So kind of took that leap with a little bit of encouragement and support because I felt like I really needed to make that change. Then I was a solo practitioner for a really long time. It wasn't, so that was in 2003. And it wasn't until 2012 that I decided to, actually more like 2014, I believe, that I decided to try my hand at hiring somebody else. So this was in Colorado, and I started a business there. It was just myself and another therapist, and then ended up moving out to Maryland. So
Oh,
I
wow.
kept that business for a little while and then actually decided to sell it because it was really difficult to go back and forth. We were doing some telehealth at that point, but not as much as
Mm-hmm.
now. Um, and then when I moved back here, I again started a solo practice and thought I really, really felt passionate about specializing in trauma. And so I think I remember telling you this story, Sharon, where I remember sitting at my desk very clearly and saying, this is crazy, but I think I want to call my business Trauma Specialists. And at that time, that was not something that you saw. Everybody was like their own name, or they were like family therapy, or the location where they were kind of name. And that was what I had done in Durango, Colorado. I was Durango Family Therapy. So I kind of fit that mold. And then I just decided this is what I really want to do. So I remember sitting there like, do I sign this paperwork saying that my company's name is Trauma Specialist? I was very scared about that. I thought, who's going to come? Are people, is that going to scare people off? But it did it. And the rest has been kind of history. So now I started hiring other therapists. There's 47 of us now in 4 different
Wow.
locations.
Over what period of time was that you went from
This was in
you?
2016. So
Okay.
from 2016 to now, so about 6 years, we've grown quite a lot. And yeah, every step of the way has been a little bit frightening. It took me, I mean, starting in 2003, it took me a lot of years to even decide to hire someone and then to decide to do that again. It's definitely a scary step to take.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm really glad that I'm here and I'm loving working with a team. That's probably one of my favorite parts. And so glad I took those risks along the way.
So let me back up a little bit because there's one really important point in your history, I think, that took you from yeah, I'm just sort of a generalist like everybody to
Mm,
no, I'm trauma specialists or a
right.
trauma specialist. And I know because we've talked about this, you really niched that down in your practice. Can you talk about that a little bit? how you made the decision, and what effect it's had on your business by
Hmm.
being so niche down.
Yeah. So along the way, about halfway through my career, I was trained in a type of therapy called EMDR,
Mhm.
and it's really effective at treating trauma specifically. And that really changed how I worked as a practitioner. And so that became my passion. And that was where this idea of what I really want to do is treat trauma. And what I want to do is help other therapists learn how to treat trauma and be excellent at it. And so it really, I think, was that point of passion, that the
Mhm.
passion was just a little bit stronger than my fear, if I'm honest, right? Like, this is what I really want to do. And this is really scary. I don't see anybody else doing this. And so, how do I make that decision, right? And that was
Mhm.
the deciding moment. But I really believe that it was the passion for what I love to do and kind of the vision of what I could see in my mind about a group of therapists that could really specialize in treating trauma, and that being a focus. All of the therapists being trained in EMDR, which all of my therapists are trained in EMDR. And yeah, so I think it's literally just following the passion, which is often a really scary thing to do when there's no other model or sort of roadmap in front of you for how to do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And but the key was you knew what your passion was. You knew the work that you really enjoyed doing
Mhm.
and that you're good at. And you did make that leap of faith to say, I'm going to do it just in this specialty area, and I'm going to do it my way. And I think that's a lot of times what people miss along the way. I had this very similar conversation with a lawyer in a recent interview who does family law, but
Mm.
not all the traditional family law things that you think of. And you usually totally think of divorce, certainly associated with trauma. Um, and she doesn't go to court. And she made that conscious decision to specialize in other areas. And there wasn't a model, just like you. So there wasn't at the time a model out there, right, of people just specializing in treatment of trauma.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay.
Exactly.
And you took the leap, which is great. So, but you mentioned vision too. So, and things changed certainly along the way. But when you first started out, and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to do trauma, and this is scary, but that's what I'm going to do. What was the vision that you had as to
Mm.
where you could take this?
Well, I think my vision was a lot smaller than where we are now, to be honest. My vision was really just probably a single location with a team of therapists that I knew well and trusted could do good work, and we could all be sort of impacting this community together. And then the opportunity came along for a second location, and I kind of thought, that might be interesting. Maybe we could do that. And I kind of really associated with the original vision. Part of how I wanted to grow my practice was really having like a welcoming, homey kind of environment for my office location. So they are not in like a medical kind of building. I really did not want to go there. So I guess that original vision of having this small group has kind of been what we've done. We've replicated that in different locations. That's kind of how that evolved. But it was really just opportunities coming up saying, gosh, do I want to do this? And again, this could be scary, this could be risky, but realizing that the model of treatment was working so well and therapists were happy doing this work and we were impacting our community positively. So now I've kind of gotten to the point of, yeah, if I have a great group of therapists, I'm happy to have a location wherever it makes sense to do that.
So, Rachel, what do you think you do that's different from your competition that sets you apart?
Hmm. That's a really great question. I think this trauma niche and also the EMDR is something that is definitely not seen across the board. I think the other piece that's really big for us is culture. So we're really invested in culture. Every one of our sites has a supervisor, and their job is really largely to manage the culture of that site, as well as some of the clinical pieces that they do. But I think we have been so lucky. We have the best team, really. Like, I could not do this without my team. And I think it's that team aspect that draws clinicians to want to work with us, as well as sort of that level of excellence that we're sort of committed to.
And then how do you get that word out how many locations do you have now?
We have 4.
4. So in the communities that you serve, how do you get the word out to them, or are they coming to you on referral from, say, another professional?
Yeah, I would say on both of those, we definitely work hard at networking with other professionals. With the original location was somewhat easier because I was already a known name, right, in that community.
Sure,
So, and
sure.
the first 2 locations are pretty close to our original location. So there's a little bit of overlap with that. The Delaware office that we've added has been a new jump into a largely different community. And we really have just built relationships with other medical professionals, legal professionals, as
Hmm.
well as other therapists, because really the truth of the matter is therapists get full pretty quickly. Anyone out there who's trying to find a therapist now knows it can be really challenging to find
Hmm.
someone with openings.
Yeah.
And that has also been kind of the motivation that's kept us growing, is the need out there is so great. And so, but yeah, I think relationship building has been the number one thing to
Mhm.
bring referrals for us.
Yeah. And that's true across the board for all professions.
I
Certainly
think
for
so too.
lawyers. It's definitely about building relationships, whether it's with other professionals or it's with groups that serve your client base, or it's with clients certainly directly. When you build there's a professional relationship, but there's the personal
Mhm.
side. And I don't mean that, you're being invited over to dinner. It's really the personal side related to the culture, that you're treating
Mhm.
people well. That I know I had read in some of the things that you had provided that you really got upset when you saw experts in therapy getting annoyed because their clients were asking questions. And
Mm,
when you treat a client that way, whether it's with trauma services or any kind of mental health services or legal services, when you treat a client that way, that just leaves a bad taste in their mouth, and they're unlikely to be sending you any more business. So I was
right.
really struck by that comment that I saw that you had made about, I was just, really annoyed the way I would see other people treating their clients. And again, you wanted to do it differently. You wanted to do it the way that you thought was respectful and most helpful to your clients. Am I right about that?
Right. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think it's so difficult, right? To go into therapy in the first place is difficult. And to explore trauma is even more challenging. So people coming in, I think there's this, as therapists, I think sometimes, you do the work and you might get irritated with people along the way, but understanding every person this is a very vulnerable, very sacred, really, space to be in with people. And I think we have to work at making sure that we are always really client focused and client centered, and being as gentle and welcoming as possible. I see a lot of mental health practices, and they all serve different roles, right? But
Mhm.
kind of that medical model where you're sitting in a waiting room with a whole bunch of people and you're just signing in with your card and your copay, and then one at a time you go back and you sit in what feels like a doctor's office. That to me is not really comfortable place to really build trust and open up and feel that sense of safety. So we really do work at that.
Now tell me, now that, telehealth, and certainly post-pandemic, telehealth is much bigger than it was
Hmm.
a few years back, pre-pandemic. How has that affected your ability to not just serve your clientele? It's obviously same thing with lawyers. It's very convenient for many clients, but in terms of the culture that you want to build, Have you had to make adjustments because of based on the telehealth model? How has that affected you?
We have. Wow. It's really been a little bit insane because at first, we first had this, we're just shutting down for 2 weeks, everybody. And a lot of the clients were like, oh, we'll just come back in 2 weeks. We don't need to switch to telehealth. Fortunately, we already had that set up within our infrastructure to provide telehealth. So that was a fairly easy transition. I'm thankful for that. But then it became everybody was telehealth for a good, I don't know, maybe 3, 4, 5 months. And we had some therapists who were still going into the office and doing telehealth from the office just because that was easier than whether they had kids at home or whatnot. It can be really distracting to have a private session. And then it's kind of evened out to where we sort of have a hybrid model. Most of our therapists do both. Some of our therapists will have like a telehealth day where they can work from home if they're seeing all telehealth clients. But what we've actually seen probably within the last 6 months, especially, is most clients calling in want in person. So we have had a huge reduction in the need for telehealth now. A lot of people are just saying we want to come into the office. So not everybody, and we still certainly provide telehealth. And I would say some of my therapists really have a preference for in-person, and others maybe a little bit more for telehealth. So everybody's schedule is slightly different. But most of our clinicians come into the office and they might see like 2 people in person and then 1 person via telehealth and kind of mix it up during the day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing that is a positive result of the pandemic was businesses now being able to offer that as an option. You can come to the office, you can be remote. It's really up to you. And also learning, I think for a lot of us, how much you can do remotely that you never dreamed you'd be able to do. Now, one comment that you made to me, I used it in the title because it really stuck with me. You said you built your business scared one step at a time. I loved that because building a business is a scary proposition. So let me ask you, how did you, and you're a great person to answer this question because you're a therapist. How did you deal with that fear? Because it will stop people dead in their tracks. I've, worked with clients that are so ready to take that next step, but the fear just has them frozen. How did you deal with it?
Yeah, I think that's true. And, maybe I think it's probably the similar for attorneys, right? I'm trained as a therapist. I am not trained as a businesswoman, more so now because I've worked at that and needed to. But in the beginning, just recognizing that the things that were scaring me were largely those business kind of questions that I just didn't know anything about. I think there are 2 levels to that. For me, I think identifying the fear is really important and just acknowledging it, because if we try to like push it away, it tends to actually have more power over us than just saying, here it is, I'm feeling this and this is normal. I think 2 things helped me overcome that. I think one was mindset and kind of really having this idea that what I wanted was greater than my fear. So that helped me push through it. I think the other piece was a good support system. So having people that I could just talk to about my fear and who would listen and sort of build me up and help me push through that. Yeah.
No, that's great.
Pieces. Yeah.
Yeah. And that can be an area of difficulty, particularly for people with a partner. I'm talking about on the personal side, not a business partner, or spouse who doesn't understand really what you're doing too well, or you've been at this for a while now. Why aren't you making money? Why aren't you making more money?
Yes.
And I'm not suggesting that that's necessarily an unreasonable question to ask, but in a situation like that, which adds to the discomfort and the fear, what are ways that you think people can really deal with it effectively?
I mean, that is a tough question. I think, and it might be very situational, but
Yeah.
what comes to mind for me is I think, in all honesty, for me, it was not a supportive partner that really helped me launch into this. It was really more supportive people on the professional side. So maybe clarifying that as well. I think too, I really had at the point where my business started really taking off and growing was actually I was going through a divorce and single at the time. And honestly, I think that helped grow my business more than anything. And the reason for that is because there was no other option. Sometimes I think, I mean, for a while having a double income was a safety net. So there
Yes.
was the safety
Yes.
net of like, I don't have to grow anything. I don't have to make any more money. I can just kind of stay at the level that I am at for lots of years. And really, it wasn't until, listen, this is all on me. I'm a single mom now, that really I started making bolder decisions because I had to. Like
That's
it was necessary.
exactly. No, that's a great point. And we're not suggesting that people go out and get divorced so that they get the
No,
motivation to,
no.
to
I
explode
just
their
thought I
business.
would share that part of my story, that I did not have that supportive person in my, intimate relationship either.
Yes. And I think, for the people that do, it's great.
Hmm.
But I think for most people, that wouldn't necessarily be the case because, as you said, like, like most lawyers, like the position you were in, I don't know anything about business. Well, most people honestly don't, unless, if you're an MBA and you're in upper management and running a business or putting a business together and getting it up off the ground, and you've had that experience, that's great. But that's not most people, and that's not most people's personal group,
Right.
So they're as confused as you are frequently about, how do you do this? I don't know what you're doing. I'm not sure what you're talking about when you talk
Mhm.
about the things that you're doing to try to establish your business, grow your business. I don't get it. But the key was, and I think is for anyone, lawyers or otherwise, trying to grow their business, is to surround yourself with people who do understand the issues, who have been where you are, who are where you are in trying to grow a business, to be able to bounce off ideas or vent frustrations, or be able to have somebody to say, well, let's look at that a little bit. What you're proposing, let's look at it in depth. Is it going to get you where you want to go?
Mm.
Because one of the things that business people have who are running solo or small businesses, lawyers included, is you got a million ideas running in your head, and you may start running off in a million different directions without stepping back and working with someone to say, what makes the most sense, what's really going to get me where I want to go. So
100%. I think, as I was growing early on, I remember the first hire that I had made, she was so helpful for me because she would just ask me lots of questions like, what are we doing about this? Or what is our structure for this? And my immediate thought in my head was like, I have no
don't know.
clue. I don't know the answer to that question. But that was really motivating for me to go out and start to find some business education for myself. There are so many
Mhm.
great programs out there. Finding a coach, it took me a few years to get into coaching. Now I have two, and really I think that is, we can learn it. We just have to put ourselves in the place to be able to do that. And that kind of leads me to another big jump for me, was going from working in my business to working on my business. and realizing that at a certain point, I'm much more effective working on it than in it. And coming up as someone who is a therapist, not everybody wants to make that switch, but that was
Right.
really important for my business growth and thinking about that. So I think the honest truth is that it takes a lot of time to run the business. And if you're
Yeah.
working in it and on it, you really could use some support. And I think a coach is actually the fastest way to
Mm.
get the benefit of all of their knowledge and insight and wisdom to help you and guide you on the business side of things.
Yeah, that certainly was my experience too. And you don't realize when you're in the middle of it, often I'm spending all my time in the business, not on the business. And
Mm-hmm.
or you'll spend time on the business, then suddenly you'll get lots and lots of work and you're very busy and you're very busy and you're very busy and you got some systems in place, but now you're really busy. So you're all in the business. And then 6 months later, perhaps your referrals have slowed down and you can't understand what happened. And it's because
Mm,
you didn't take the time, set aside the time to continue on the business, even though you're really busy, and you didn't set aside the time to step back as happened with you, to say, is it time for me to bring on someone else to
mhm.
work in the business while I'm working on the business? So those are all valuable steps that sometimes get lost because people get so very busy,
Mhm.
and they forget about the work on the business side. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
And delegation to that end is something I've really had to work on over the last couple of years, because it's tough when you're used to being a solo practitioner. As you bring people in, learning what to delegate, what to do yourself, it's a tough thing.
that I'm glad you mentioned that, because it is tough, and lawyers by nature are controlling. I mean, well, I'll be honest about it. I'm a lawyer. I know all my friends are
Sharon,
lawyers.
therapists are too, if we're just
Okay,
being
good. Oh, I don't
honest.
feel so
Okay.
bad then. Yes. So, but when you're controlling, it's very difficult to be able to step back and say, you know what? I not only can delegate this, there's other people that will do it much better than
Mhm.
me. And I need to give this up, let them go do their thing, do it really well, and move this business forward. But
Yeah,
it is tough. It is
it
tough to
is.
let go. Yeah. And
Mhm.
as you said, I mean, you built it. You're building it. So how did you know that it was time to let go a little bit and to get some help, to bring in another therapist in your case?
I think when I first brought in another therapist, it was really for the impact, for being able to serve more people, because one
Hmm.
therapist can only serve a certain number of people
Right.
before just getting totally overwhelmed. So it started with that. Um, I think, and then as I grew, there were all of these sort of pinch points, like pain points, where I was just overwhelmed. I was doing so many things. I was seeing clients all day and then trying to fit in all of the business things that needed my attention. And so each time I would sort of hit that point, I would try to stop and get some advice and figure things out, like, what do I need to do to make this work a little bit better? And it was
Mhm.
usually always either bringing someone in or delegating something, stepping back from something, and learning for me that yes, other therapists can do therapy just as well as I can do therapy. It takes some trust building there, and also recognizing that they also do some things better than I do. So
Yeah.
letting other people have that niche and do that thing that they do better, and helping me too then to find what is the thing I most need to do. So the question I ask myself regularly is, what has to be me? What is something that no one else in my business can do? And
I love
that's
that.
kind of a small thing when you really think about it. What has to be me? And that's my job description. And by the way, that changes at different stages of my practice. But as I ask myself that question, that helps me say, okay, this over here really could be done by somebody else. And how do we rearrange? How do we restructure or make that work so that I can delegate something in order to have space for the things that have to be me?
Yeah, exactly. I love that. In fact, I wrote that down because I'm going to incorporate that as part of my teachings, because you're right. That phrase, what has to be me? And when you're honest with yourself about it, it's not nearly as much as you might think that has to be you. So that's a wonderful, phrase to use, and that's a wonderful thought for all of us to make sure that we incorporate that in our businesses day in and day out. What has to be me? Because if it doesn't have to be me, then make it somebody else, because that's how you're going to be able to really grow your business. As you have, Rachel, that your story is amazing how you went from the idea, the passion that you had, I want to do this trauma, I want to do it this way. And from there, you went from you as a therapist to 47 therapists over 4 locations. So kudos to you. That's a wonderful success story. Yeah.
And I have to throw in lots of great admin staff because they support us as well in a big way.
Yeah, no question. There's no question of that. That fits into the what has to be me, because there's so much of it that doesn't have to be you. And when you have a great team working with you, it makes all the difference. All the difference. Right?
Really. Yeah. I can't even, nothing would happen without my team at this point. Yeah. It's just that essential.
Well, listen, Rachel, this has been wonderful. I really thank you for coming and sharing your story with us and your business tips, because what is true for your business as a therapist is 100% true for our businesses as lawyers. So I thank you for that. If somebody, listening may want to get in touch with you, either related to your services, or perhaps, I know, for divorce attorneys, trauma therapists in particular may be very valuable. How can they get in touch with you? What's the best thing to do?
Probably either through our website is a way to get to know us. So Trauma Specialists OFMD is the .com, and then it's also Trauma Specialists OFDE for our Delaware location. And then email.
Wait a minute, I'm going to put it up. Trauma Specialists. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, Trauma Specialists with an S, OFMD.com.
Of Maryland. Okay.
Yeah, is our Maryland locations, and then same address except OFDE for Delaware.
Okay. There's Maryland.
Thank you.
And then you just change it to OFDE for
Delaware.
For Delaware. Okay. Wonderful.
Yep, that's the best way to get in contact with us. Thank you, Sharon. This has been so amazing. I really appreciate this opportunity. I love talking about business. So it's been a great learning curve for me, and I'm happy to share my learning journey.
Thank you. It's been great having you. And for everybody that's listening, you can get in touch with Rachel's group at traumaspecialistsofmd.com or Trauma Specialists of DE, if you're in Delaware, .com. And check it out, because she's got a great group that works with her and a great program. And for those of you who want more information about running your law firm, go to my website at boldwomenlawyers.com. Download my success guide. It's right there on the first page, the home page. You can download it. There's lots of business tips in there about mindset, about marketing, about management, including processes. So make sure you take advantage of that. And thank you for listening. And make sure you come back next week. We'll have another great interview. Have a great day.